My name is Ethan Carver. I'm 31 years old. And last Wednesday I watched my parents break into my apartment on my own security feed. My father held a tape measure. My mother took notes. And my younger brother smirking. Cocky Mason dropped onto my couch like he already owned the place. "This'll be perfect once Ethan's gone," Dad said. That was the moment I realized my family wasn't just visiting, they were planning an invasion. What they didn't know was that I was already recording everything. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from. And hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by family. Because what happened next wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a full-blown ambush, dressed up as family helping family. Trust me, you're going to want to see how deep this goes. I grew up in Bellevue, Washington, in a house with a wraparound porch, two golden retrievers, and parents who thought appearances equaled love. My father, Bob Carver, ran a small import business that did well enough for him to wear pressed shirts and talk about networking at every barbecue. My mother, Linda, managed a few rental properties, which she referred to as our portfolio. We were comfortable, middle-class, successful, the kind of family people envied on the outside. But inside, there was always a ranking. I used to think it was temporary, that being the firstborn meant higher expectations, and once my little brother Mason grew up, it would balance out. It never did. I was 8 when he was born, old enough to remember the shift. The day my parents brought him home, my mom's world contracted to a 7-pound orbit that didn't include me. The house smelled like baby powder and hospital plastic. I stood in the doorway, clutching a drawing I'd made our family of 3 holding hands under a blue sky. Mom didn't look up when I offered it. "Not now, honey. Mason needs quiet." That sentence stuck like a splinter. As years passed, every celebration turned into a split screen. Mason in the spotlight, me in the background. When I won the regional science fair, Dad said, "Good job, son," and turned to Mason, 5 years old. "You'll do that someday too, champ." I didn't realize it then, but he was already training him to take everything for granted. My chores grew longer. My allowance vanished because, "You're older, you can handle it." Mason, though, got rewarded for existing. He broke a lamp. Cute accident. I scratched the car washing it. Irresponsible. The balance never shifted back. One memory still smells like burnt turkey and lemon cleaner. Thanksgiving, 2004. I was 15, elbow deep in dishes because Mom said guests couldn't see a messy kitchen. Mason, 10, strutted in wearing a jersey he hadn't earned, holding a football signed by my dad's friend from the Seahawks. "Look, Ethan," Dad said proudly. "Real players respect hustle." I was sweating, dish soap burning my hands. "Cool," I muttered. "Don't be jealous," he said. The tone wasn't teasing, it was instruction. Don't challenge the family story. Don't disrupt the golden child myth. That night, while everyone watched the parade replay, I took the trash out and stood under the porch light. It flickered, buzzing faintly. The cold bit my fingers, and I remember thinking, if I disappeared right now, would they even notice? High school became my escape route. I worked at Best Buy after classes, saving for a used truck. Every paycheck was proof I could rely on myself. When I got accepted into MIT, I printed the email and ran downstairs, expecting something like pride. Mom skimmed it and smiled politely. "That's wonderful, Ethan. But have you looked at in-state schools? Boston's expensive." Dad chimed in, "Yeah. Be practical. Tuition's no joke. You're smart. You can make any school look good." 2 weeks later, they bought Mason his first car for his 16th birthday, brand new, silver Audi. The irony wasn't lost on me. I congratulated him anyway. He didn't even thank me. I went to MIT on scholarships, part-time jobs, ramen noodles, and quiet resentment. Calls from home were mostly logistics, tax forms, birthdays I forgot, updates about Mason's basketball trophies. "He's really finding his path," Mom would say. I wanted to ask, "What path?" "The one you paved for him with my silence?" But I swallowed it. After graduation, I landed a job in Seattle. I thought distance would fix everything. It didn't. My parents treated my independence like a novelty. When I bought my first small apartment, a box overlooking a parking lot, they said, "Good for you, Ethan. You've always been responsible." The tone implied it was boring. Stability didn't impress them. Flash did. Then Mason started his business phase. First, it was sneakers, reselling hype shoes online. Then dropshipping. Then crypto. Each venture came with bragging rights at family dinners and a new round of funding from mom and dad. They called it helping him get established. Meanwhile, I was helping them fix their router or file taxes. One son was the dreamer, the other was the support system. 6 years ago, my grandfather dad's father passed away. He'd been the only one who saw me without filters. On his last visit, he pulled me aside, gave me his old Rolex, and said, "For the man who earns everything twice, once in effort, once in forgiveness." I didn't fully get it, but I wore that watch every day. 3 months later, Mom asked to borrow it. Said she wanted to keep it safe until Mason's graduation. I hesitated, then handed it over. She smiled, promised it'd stay in the family. Weeks passed. Then, one night, scrolling Instagram, I froze. Mason was at a bar, arm around a girl, flashing that same Rolex under club lights. The caption read, "Built not born." I remember the blood rush to my face, the taste of metal behind my teeth. I confronted Mom. She waved it off. "He just wanted to wear it for a photo, honey. Don't be so dramatic." That's when something in me snapped, but quietly. I didn't yell. I just nodded, went home, and the next morning installed a full security system. Cameras, motion sensors, cloud backups. It wasn't paranoia. It was proof. I told myself it was for safety. But deep down I wanted witnesses, digital ones that couldn't gaslight me. Every beep of those cameras was a boundary forming brick by brick. For a while, peace returned. I focused on work, climbed from developer to lead architect, then co-founded a startup with Marcus. We built something real. I bought a new place, a corner apartment overlooking Elliott Bay. Floor-to-ceiling windows, hardwood floors that clicked under my shoes. It wasn't just home, it was a statement. You don't own me anymore. Sometimes, Mom dropped by to check in. She'd rearrange things, move my knives, open windows, leave comments about the lighting. "You should let more light in, Ethan. It feels cold in here." It wasn't about light, it was about control. Mason rarely called, but when he did, it was for money or introductions. "Bro, you're in tech. You probably know investors, right? I got this crypto course launching soon." I stopped answering after the third time. And yet, part of me, the loyal, pathetic part, still gave my parents a spare key. "Just in case of emergency," I said. I told myself it was convenience. Truth was, I wanted them to see my life and finally respect it. They never used it for an emergency. Until that Wednesday, when I saw my father on camera measuring my walls. I realized that key had never been a gift, it was permission. I didn't know it back then, but the moment I handed them that spare key, I'd opened the door to the war that was coming. The footage from that Wednesday didn't just make me angry, it rewound every memory I'd spent years trying to bury. Watching my parents stroll through my apartment like realtors reminded me of every time they'd walk through my life the same way, rearranging, judging, never asking permission. When I was a kid, privacy didn't exist. If my bedroom door was closed, Dad called it attitude. If I argued, he'd stand in the doorway and say, "You don't pay rent here, son." Now, 31 years old, successful, self-sufficient, I was still being treated like the tenant of my own life. The worst part? I almost expected it. Some part of me had always known they'd cross the line again. The only question was when. That night after work, I replayed the footage on loop. The sound of the tape measure clicking open, Mom's voice saying, "He can work from the office like everyone else." Mason's smirk as he said, "Way better than the dump I'm crashing at." It felt like déjà vu of every holiday dinner conversation, different setting, same script. My phone buzzed, a message from Marcus. "Still alive? You've been staring at that screen for an hour." I typed back, "Just family things." He replied, "The dangerous kind or the emotional kind?" "Both." I didn't tell him the details yet. It felt too absurd, parents planning a home invasion with a tape measure. But the longer I watched, the more I understood it wasn't absurd at all. It was the logical next step for people who never heard no from me. I opened my desk drawer and took out the old envelope where I'd kept Grandpa's Rolex receipt, along with a photo of him handing it to me. The paper had yellowed, but the ink was sharp, proof that someone once believed I was worth something without conditions. Mason had always resented that. When we were teenagers, he called it the pity watch. Said Grandpa felt bad because I wasn't the fun one. I didn't argue. I just waited, like I always did, for reality to prove me right. Reality didn't disappoint. A month after the Rolex stunt, Mason borrowed 10 grand from me to launch an e-commerce brand. I sent it out of guilt and heard nothing for months. When I asked about repayment, he acted offended. I thought you were helping family, not investing. That was his favorite word, family. It meant free labor, free money, and zero consequences. He failed, of course, then moved on to the next hustle. By the time he hit 28, Mason had burned through more cash than I'd made my first 5 years in tech. And Mom still said, he just hasn't found his passion yet. I had. My passion was boundaries. I started documenting everything. Every loan, every excuse. Every time Mom called me selfish for not bailing Mason out again. I didn't plan on using it, but habits form fast when you grow up never being believed. Then Kim Alvarez entered the picture. I met her by accident, or maybe fate. She reached out on LinkedIn with a polite message. Hi Ethan, I think you might be related to someone I know, Mason Carver? I almost ignored it, but something about her tone, tight, restrained, made me reply. She told me she was a nurse, worked double shifts, and that Mason had borrowed her credit cards for a crypto education business. He'd promised to triple her investment. Instead, he maxed out 3 cards, $40,000, and ghosted her for 2 weeks. When she finally confronted him, he told her I was a trust fund kid who could help if things went south. That was the moment I decided to stop being passive. We spent hours comparing notes, her transactions, my bank transfers, screenshots of his business page. The puzzle formed itself. Mason wasn't just irresponsible, he was deliberate. She sent me photos of him wearing the Rolex again, this time with her initials carved on a bracelet next to it. My stomach turned. The same props. New victim. I promised Kim I'd handle it, but not impulsively. I'm not calling him out online, I said. I'm ending it properly. She nodded. Then let's end it. We spent the next month gathering everything. She recorded calls, forwarded messages, exported PDFs. I cross-referenced dates with deposits from my parents. Turns out they'd financed half his scams without even realizing. He told them he was building an affiliate marketing team. In reality, he was moving money between accounts like a shell game. The deeper I dug, the more something inside me split open. Because every transaction felt like déjà vu. The way Mom covered his debts, the way Dad looked away. It wasn't just Mason's fraud. It was a family system. I sat in my living room late one night, lights off, city glow reflecting off the bay. On my laptop, spreadsheets of betrayal stretched across the screen. That's when I decided on the dinner. Not a fight, not revenge, just the truth served hot. I texted Mason first. Hey, dinner this weekend? Been too long. He replied instantly. Sure. Mom and Dad free too? I smiled. Of course. Bring everyone. They thought it was reconciliation. I thought it was closure. The next 4 days became a ritual. I worked 12-hour shifts at the startup by day, then spent my nights preparing the evidence. Printed each file, labeled every envelope. One for Dad, one for Mom, one for Mason. I didn't want shouting. I wanted silence. The kind that only facts can deliver. Marcus noticed. You've been nesting, he said one night, watching me clean my desk at the office. What's happening? Family dinner, I said. He raised an eyebrow. That sounds ominous. Maybe it is. When Friday came, I picked up groceries, short ribs, vegetables, the kind of food Mom always said I never bothered cooking. I wanted everything to look perfect. I wanted them to see what stability looked like. As I seasoned the meat that night, I caught my reflection in the window. My face looked calm, but my hands shook slightly. Not from fear, anticipation. I replayed the camera footage one more time. Watched Dad measure, Mom scribble, Mason smirk, then paused on a single frame. Mason lounging on my couch, shoes on the table. I zoomed in until the pixels blurred. That image, the arrogance, the entitlement was better than any pep talk. By Saturday afternoon, the folders sat on my dining table, aligned perfectly. Kim had dropped off her copies too. She was nervous but steady. You sure you want to do this in person? She asked. Yes, I said. I need them to see themselves. She nodded slowly. Then make them look. When the doorbell finally rang at 6, I didn't flinch. Through the peephole, I saw them, Dad in his pressed shirt, Mom carrying wine, Mason in a leather jacket grinning like a conqueror. He mouthed, "Missed me?" I smiled back, cold and polite, and unlocked the door. If I'd known how far this night would ripple, how it would unravel not just Mason's life, but the entire illusion my parents lived in, I might have hesitated. But I didn't. Because that night wasn't about revenge. It was about proof. And proof, once seen, can't be unseen. I didn't realize it then, but the moment I hit record on those cameras months earlier, I hadn't just protected my apartment. I'd built the stage for their downfall. The night before the dinner, sleep was impossible. I kept hearing the sound of the tape measure snapping open and shut, that metallic click echoing like a trigger I hadn't realized had already been pulled. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my father's hand marking walls that weren't his to measure. Morning came gray and sharp. Seattle fog pressed against my windows, turning the city into a blur. I brewed coffee strong enough to peel paint and sat at my kitchen table, staring at the folders stacked like loaded weapons. One for each of them. 3 bullets of truth. Kim texted just after 8. You sure about tonight? You could just send the evidence to the FTC. I wrote back. I'm sure. They need to see it firsthand. Otherwise, they'll twist the story again. She sent one more message. Then I'll be there. By noon, I'd read every file twice. Mason's business registration using my address. Screenshots of his crypto masterclass, literally stolen YouTube videos with a $2,000 price tag. His Instagram captions promising financial freedom. Bank records of mom wiring him $5,000 for marketing. Dad transferring another 10 labeled business expansion. It was all right there, a decade of enabling disguised as support. Around 2 p.m., my phone buzzed with a call from mom. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Ethan, she began, her voice too bright. We're all excited for dinner. You're making that Korean barbecue, right? Yeah, I said. Good. Oh, and don't worry about Mason bringing his girlfriend. She's lovely. That made me pause. Girlfriend? Kim. The nurse. You'll like her. I bit my tongue. She's already been here, Mom. You just don't know it. Sure, I said finally. It'll be interesting. After we hung up, I stared at the phone until the screen dimmed. My parents really had no clue how deep this was. They thought tonight was a peace offering, not an autopsy. Marcus stopped by around 5. He handed me a bottle of bourbon. In case diplomacy fails, he said. I won't drink until it's over. He studied my face. You sure you're ready for whatever comes out of this? Doesn't matter. It's already in motion. He stayed for half an hour, helped set the table, then clapped me on the shoulder. You've always been the calm one. Don't let them make you the villain. I won't, I said. But I'm done being the backup character. When he left, the silence returned, thick, electric. I looked around my apartment, every corner spotless, every chair aligned. It felt like a courtroom disguised as a home. Then the memories started bleeding through again, uninvited. A birthday dinner when I was 22. I'd just been promoted to junior developer. Dad asked me to help Mason with his resume. Mason never wrote one. Instead, he borrowed my laptop, deleted my code project by mistake, and shrugged. Relax, bro. It's not the end of the world. Mom defended him. He's just not technical like you. Don't overreact. I remember standing there, frozen, while my promotion email sat unsent in the drafts folder. That night, I learned silence was their favorite way to make me feel small. I shook the memory off. That pattern guilt, minimize, deflect, it would show up tonight too. I needed to stay 3 steps ahead. So, I rehearsed my lines. Out loud. Dad, I know you meant well, but this was a break-in. Mom, helping someone doesn't mean surrendering to them. Mason, you're not a businessman. You're a parasite. The last one stuck in my throat. Not because it was cruel, but because it was true. At 5:45, I changed clothes, black sweater, jeans, neutral, nothing flashy. The outfit of a man, ready to be misjudged but not rattled. When the clock hit 6, the elevator dinged. Voices carried down the hallway. Mom's laughter, Dad's deep chuckle, Mason's exaggerated confidence. I exhaled once, steadying my heartbeat. The doorbell rang. I opened the door and smiled. Come in. They entered like a parade. Mom kissed my cheek. Dad scanned the room approvingly. Mason went straight to the couch again. Still keeping the place neat, Dad said. That's my boy. Yeah, Mason added, dropping onto the cushions. You even cleaned for me. I ignored him. Dinner went through the motions at first, small talk, jokes about work. Mom fussing over the sauce. Then Mason started bragging about his new investors. Dad nodded along, proud. I listened quietly, memorizing every word. So, Ethan, Mom said between bites, maybe you could help Mason set up some business contacts. You know all those tech people. Sure, I said. But first, there's something I want to show you. Mason smirked. Oh, is this a PowerPoint? Classic Ethan move. Not quite, I said, tapping my phone. The TV screen lit up behind me, the first frame of the video feed. Dad, holding the tape measure. Mom, taking notes. Mason, smirking on my couch. For a moment, no one breathed. Then Mom spoke, voice trembling. What? What is this? Security footage, I said. From Wednesday. The day you decided to repurpose my home. Mason's face drained. You can't, this is private. It's my apartment, I said evenly. And this camera's been running since the Rolex incident. Remember that? Dad tried to step in. Ethan, let's not make a scene. We were just planning to move Mason in while I was gone. I heard the whole conversation. He won't make a scene. Family comes first. Sound familiar? Silence. Thick. Suffocating. That was the first blow, but not the last. Because this wasn't just a confrontation, it was the opening statement. Dad's mouth opened and closed, like he was searching for the right spin. Ethan, you're taking this out of context. I tilted my head. Oh? What's the right context for breaking and entering? Mom's eyes darted to the camera feed on the screen, then back to me. We weren't breaking in, sweetheart. You gave us the key. Exactly, I said. For emergencies. Not interior design plans. Mason stood, smirking again, but his jaw tight. Man, this is insane. You've always been paranoid. Really? Then maybe explain why you listed my apartment address on your business registration. Kowar Capital LLC. Ring any bells? That got him. A flicker of panic flashed in his eyes. That's public info. Anyone can. I pulled the filing, I cut in. Your LLC lists this address. And because of that, every scam you've run now ties directly to my property. Dad's face flushed. Scam? He's an entrepreneur. Selling stolen content under fake promises isn't entrepreneurship, Dad. It's fraud. The air thickened. Mom's voice went small. Ethan, you can't talk to us like this. We're family. There it was. The line that had excused every wound for 3 decades. I leaned forward. Family means you don't steal from me. You don't lie to me. You don't use my name to cover your messes. Mason scoffed. What are you? Some kind of cop now? No, I said. Just someone who finally stopped playing the idiot. The tension fractured into nervous laughter from Mom, as if she could charm the truth away. But then the doorbell rang again. Everyone looked up. Kim stepped inside. Her expression was calm, almost clinical. She carried a folder under one arm and didn't look at Mason. Sorry I'm late, she said softly. I figured it's better if everyone hears the same thing at once. Mom blinked. You're Mason's girlfriend? Kim nodded. Was? Mason's tone sharpened. What the hell are you doing here? Returning your debts, she said, and set the folder on the table. She spread out color-printed credit card statements like tarot cards. $40,000. Clubs. Designer stores. Fake ads. Every charge made with my cards. Dad looked at the papers as if they were written in another language. Mason, tell me this isn't true. He laughed hollowly. She's exaggerating. She knew what she was getting into. I knew you were lying, Kim said, and I can prove it. She pulled out her phone, tapped play. Mason's voice filled the apartment. Babe, once this course launches, you'll get your money back. Ethan's backing me. He owes me anyway. That last sentence dropped like a bomb. Dad turned to me. You backed him? No. He just used my name, like he used everything else. Mom's eyes filled with tears. Ethan, this is too much. Can't we talk privately? Sure, I said. After we finish watching this. I hit play on the second clip, the audio from my camera feed. Dad's voice echoed through the speakers. Once Mason settled, Ethan won't dare to kick him out. Silence followed. Then Mom covered her mouth. Dad looked pale. Mason's smirk collapsed into rage. You think this makes you better than us? He snapped. You think success gives you the right to humiliate your family? No, I said quietly. You did that yourselves. He stepped forward, fists clenched. You've always looked down on me. I didn't move. That's because you've always been beneath what you could have been. Mom jumped between us, shaking. Stop. Both of you. But I was done stopping. I turned to Dad. You funded every failed idea he had. You bailed him out every time. You told me responsibility was cold, but all you did was teach him how to burn everyone around him. Dad's jaw tightened. Watch your tone. Why? You only hear me when I'm quiet. Kim's voice broke the standoff. I've already filed a civil suit. The FTC has an open case. I brought them copies of everything. Mom gasped. You what? Kim looked at me. And I gave them your evidence, Ethan. They said it strengthens the investigation. Good, I said. Mason slammed his hand on the table. You're both dead to me. I smiled faintly. Finally, something we agree on. He stormed out, the door banging against the frame. The sound rattled the wine glasses. Mom burst into tears. Dad tried to comfort her, but his face was stone. You've destroyed this family, he said. No, I replied. You destroyed it years ago. I just turned on the lights. He grabbed his coat, muttering curses under his breath, and ushered Mom out. She left the wine behind. When the door clicked shut, the apartment fell silent, except for Kim's uneven breathing. You okay? I asked. She wiped her eyes. Not really, but I guess this was overdue. Yeah, I said. It was. She looked at me, voice trembling but sure. He's not going to stop, you know. People like him don't. They escalate. I know, I said. That's why I'm not done either. She hesitated. What are you going to do? Finish what we started, I said, and make sure none of them ever touch my life again. When she left, I stood by the window, watching her disappear into the night. The bay lights shimmered against the glass like static. Behind me, the folders lay open on the table, truth bleeding across every page. Somewhere in the city, Mason was probably already rewriting the story, painting himself the victim. But for the first time in my life, I didn't care what narrative he built, because I finally had mine written in hard evidence, sealed in digital timestamps, and carved into the quiet of my apartment. The war was no longer about who they thought I was. It was about proving who they could never be. And I had just drawn the battle line. I didn't sleep that night. The echoes of their voices replayed in my head. Mom crying, Dad's rage simmering behind his silence, Mason's parting threat. It should have felt like victory. Instead, the air in my apartment felt heavy, saturated with the ghosts of every dinner conversation that had ever gone wrong. I sat by the window as dawn broke over Elliott Bay, watching the city wake. Boats cut through the gray water like slow-moving knives. Somewhere out there, Mason was probably pacing, figuring out his next con. But I had no regrets. I'd drawn the line, and for once, I hadn't moved it to make anyone else comfortable. By noon, my phone started buzzing. Missed calls, unknown numbers. Then, one voicemail from Dad. His voice was low, measured. Ethan, you've gone too far. Mason's upset. Your mother's sick with worry. Take that video down before you ruin your own career. I deleted it, then blocked the number. But the message lingered. The threat wasn't about reputation, it was about control. That's what they'd always used against me. Their disapproval, their guilt, their silence. I wasn't giving them that leverage again. A few hours later, Marcus stopped by the office. He'd read the situation in my face before I even said anything. So it's done? Not quite, I said. I'm turning everything over to Ava today. Ava Patel, my lawyer, had been waiting for the call. When I arrived at her downtown office, she was already reviewing Kim's documentation, scanning through timestamps and transaction trails. You have everything organized, she said, impressed. If this were a chess match, you're already 3 moves from checkmate. I'm not after checkmate, I said. Just containment. She nodded. We'll file a restraining order preemptively. You've got the video evidence, the financial documentation, and the voicemail threats. It'll hold. As for Mason, once the FTC subpoenas his business records, the fraud charges will land. How long? Days. Maybe a week. I left her office feeling lighter than I had in months. Not free yet, but close. 2 days later, it happened. The first headline popped up on a small local news site. Seattle man under federal investigation for crypto education scheme. The thumbnail showed Mason's face from a corporate event, polished smile, blazer, fake confidence. I stared at the screen, pulse steady. It had begun. By that evening, the article spread across Reddit, then Twitter. Kim texted me screenshots of comments victims sharing their stories, others linking to his LLC registration. His business address my address. I replied simply, let it run its course. But Mason didn't let it go quietly. At 10 p.m., my intercom buzzed. I froze. When I checked the camera feed, Mason was standing in the lobby, hair disheveled, eyes bloodshot. He looked less like the cocky brother I knew and more like a cornered animal. Carl, the head of building security, was already there. Mr. Carver. He's demanding to come up. Says it's an emergency. Don't let him in, I said into the mic. Call the police. He's violating a restraining request in process. Carl nodded. Already on it. Through the speaker, I heard Mason's voice rising. You think this fixes anything? You think ruining me makes you better? You're sick, Ethan. Carl's tone was calm, professional. Sir, you need to leave now. I just want to talk to my brother. You're trespassing. Police are on their way. The sound of a scuffle. Then footsteps retreating. Silence. I exhaled for what felt like the first time in minutes. The next morning, Ava called. He's in custody, she said. He violated a pending restraining order and resisted. The officers found multiple credit cards in his car under other names. This strengthens both cases, civil and federal. I closed my eyes. Good. This will get ugly for your parents, she warned. His legal bills, the house they mortgaged, it's all connected. I'm not responsible for their choices, I said quietly. The trial moved fast. Within a week, federal agents raided Mason's apartment and storage unit. They found boxes of counterfeit training materials, fake testimonials, and hard drives with transaction logs. It was textbook wire fraud. But the real climax didn't come in court, it came at my parents' house. A week before sentencing, Dad emailed me. One line, you owe your family a conversation. I ignored it. Then Frank, my uncle, called. Your father's losing his mind, he said. He's blaming you for everything. Blaming me for exposing it? For not covering it up, Frank replied. He invited me to coffee neutral ground. When I arrived, he looked tired, older than I remembered. They're desperate, he said. They've lost 2 properties, and your mom's retirement is gone. Mason's looking at prison time. I didn't do that to them, I said. I know, but they'll never see it that way. I leaned back. Then, that's their story to live with. He slid a business card across the table. Ava already has the legal side handled. But if Mason escalates again, this firm specializes in threat assessment. Just in case. Thanks, I said, pocketing it. Let's hope I never need it. When sentencing day came, I didn't attend, but Kim did. She texted me afterward. 18 months. 5 years supervised release. Restitution confirmed. I read the message twice. No triumph, no joy, just closure. That evening, as the city lights blinked on, Marcus joined me for a drink on my balcony. To endings, he said, raising his glass. Not endings, I corrected. Boundaries. We clinked glasses. The wind off Elliott Bay was cool and clean, carrying away the stale air of the past. For a brief second, I saw a reflection of my younger self in the window, the kid who once believed love meant earning approval. That kid was gone. In his place stood someone who'd finally learned what self-respect actually looked like. And when Marcus asked if I'd ever speak to them again, Dad, Mom, Mason, I just smiled. Not unless they show up with honesty and a court summons, I said. He laughed. But I didn't. Because I meant it. That night, I stood alone at the glass, the city humming beneath me, no chaos, no guilt, just silence and the hum of servers in the next room, backing up everything to the cloud, every file, every frame. Proof that once upon a time, I stopped being their scapegoat and became my own witness. The line had been drawn, and this time, it was permanent. 6 months later, Seattle had moved on. News cycles shifted. Hashtags faded. But the silence my family left behind still echoed. Sometimes, late at night, I'd catch myself glancing at the door, half expecting to see Mason standing there again, defiant, manipulative, certain he could talk his way back into my life. But the lock stayed silent. Kim called occasionally. She'd moved to Portland, started therapy, even joked about writing a book one day. You gave me closure, she said once. I told her the truth. You gave me proof. Without her courage, Mason's empire of lies might have kept standing. Mom tried emailing twice more. Long paragraphs about forgiveness, faith, and how family is all we really have. She didn't mention the money, the investigation, or the years of gaslighting. Just one final line that stuck with me. You're not the same person we raised. She was right. Because the person they raised would have folded, would have apologized for setting boundaries, would have mistaken guilt for love. Now I knew better. My life became clean in a way I'd never experienced, not perfect, but uncluttered. The startup kept growing. Marcus and I landed another investor. And Sam, the woman who walked into my life when the dust was still settling, had a way of grounding me without trying to fix me. She didn't see a broken son or a bitter brother. She saw someone who'd finally stopped bleeding for people who never noticed he was hurt. But peace is a fragile thing. One Tuesday evening, I got an envelope in the mail. No return address. Just my name, printed neatly. Inside was a single photo Mason, outside a halfway house, looking thinner, older, but unmistakably him. On the back, in his handwriting, "You can block my number, but not your conscience." I stared at it for a long time, then slipped it back into the envelope and filed it with the rest of the evidence labeled, time-stamped, archived, because that's what boundaries are. Records. Proof that you can survive a story without rewriting it. Maybe Mason really was trying to change. Maybe that was another con. I didn't need to find out. They'd taken everything they could from me. My patience, my trust, my silence. But the one thing they couldn't touch anymore was my peace. And that, I realized, was the real revenge. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, you know exactly how it feels to fight for peace instead of approval. Hit like, leave a comment, and tell me, have you ever had to walk away to finally breathe? And don't forget to subscribe, because this story isn't over. Some people think revenge means destruction. For me, it meant building a life they could never invade again. Next time, I'll tell you what happened when the past tried to knock on my door one last time, and why I didn't answer.